Yeah. So before we start, let's kind of introduce that. We'll do a 10-minute recap now. We won't be answering questions right away, but feel free to put them in the chat because after the recap, we'll have like a Q&A moment we're gonna add. So then, so just dump your questions and we'll get back to them later.
Okay, serious face, Sean. Serious YouTube face.
Cheers.
Okay, let's go. So, two important things happened last week, and we started off the week with Calder made a new blog post about Wooting to Lekker edition. He made a very detailed update about the current progress, where we are, what we're working on, and that kind of jazz. Highly recommend that you read into it. And yeah, just go to the blog and search further, read it, because it's very interesting. One of the things is a analog test Calder is talking about, how we test analog on the keyboard, and Jeroen can showcase it now live on the stream how we actually do it.
All right.
Now the big swap.
No, not yet. Okay. I'm gonna introduce a little bit first, because otherwise you'll just see numbers that they don't really make that much sense, or maybe they'll be a bit more interesting. So so when we talk about analog calibration, what that kind of means is that, so we have with the Lekker switch, of course, we have a magnet in the switch, and then we have a sensor on the board, and then this magnet moves when you press the switch down, the magnet moves closer to the sensor, and like this sort of output of your sensor changes. But then the problem is that what you get out of the sensor when you press it down is not like a linear line, meaning when you're at the start of the press, the value will change slightly, and the closer the magnet comes to the sensor, the difference in value will be higher. So if you want to kind of imagine that as a curve, if we go back to some nice mathematics here, is that it will kind of look like this. So at the start it will be slow, and then it accelerates and it goes down faster. So it's kind of like an exponential kind of graph, which of course with the whole Corona graph we see a lot of nowadays. So that should be easy to imagine. But of course, what you want to do is you want to make it into a straight line, because what you want to do is if you press 0.1 millimeter down, you also want to have a value that corresponds with 0.1 millimeter, and so on and so on. So that is what we do when we talk about analog calibration. So what we did is we took our Lekker EVT sample, and we did a bunch of measurements. We used a very cool tool, this one. Let me see, open the camera. This one, so this tool can kind of like press, so I use this to press down the keys, and you can kind of finely adjust it to make steps of 0.1 millimeter. So I put this on top of the key, and then I keep switching this one until in 0.1 millimeter steps to get like a kind of like analog value per distance curve. And once we had a lot of those values, Simon went to work with some nice Python math modeling, or I don't really know what he did, something he did in school. And basically, okay, how do I get this graph to a straight graph? So that's what we've been working on the last 2 weeks. That was the introduction. So let's jump into a demonstration to kind of see how this works.
Maybe go a little bit into detail of the calibrations. Can the users calibrate their own keyboards, or will all keyboards be auto-calibrated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. We're not 100% sure about that one yet. So what we kind of want to aim towards is that, so we'll definitely not do any sort of advanced calibration, because we will never set up something where you need to kind of like slowly press a key or something like that, because that will never give an accurate result. But what we could do for every key is kind of have like this value, like what we call the start value, which basically means, okay, none of the keys are pressed. So we kind of say, okay, so we take a value when none of the keys are pressed, which is our start value. And then we take a value when your key is pressed all the way, which is your end value. And then you can kind of map a line in between. But we're not really sure yet what exactly is required. We do know that the start value is very important, especially because what I said at the start, you can kind of see the difference in value at the start is not very high. So it's super critical that you get the start point very accurate. But luckily that is very easy to do because it's just like, okay, don't touch your keyboard for a second and we're done with that calibration. What we're not sure about yet is if we actually need this endpoint calibration. That is something we're not sure about yet. We're still figuring out. But what we hope to aim towards is to only have calibration for the start point, which basically means, okay, don't press your keyboard for 1 second or a limited amount of time, and your keyboard is calibrated. That's what we want to aim towards, but that's still under development.
Cool.
Okay, let's jump into some demo, and I can also kind of show the software we use for our internal testing. Okay, let's see. We set this up. This is going to be super smooth, of course.
Oh, actually, not that bad. Not that bad.
Okay, let me adjust this light a little bit. There's Lucia, Niels, how kun je Lucia vasthouden? There's a dog. Okay, this light. All right. So, can you see my mouse? Can I use it to point?
No, I don't.
Not very clear.
No, cannot see.
Okay, so on the right you can see you can basically see the keyboard with all the analog values. So right now I don't press any keys on the keyboard, so they're all a nice 255, which basically means not pressed.
It's so weird that the screen is mirrored.
The screen is mirrored?
Yeah, it's really awkward looking at it.
Okay, well, can you see it?
Yeah, you can see it. It's yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So with this keyboard, I already did like this start value calibration. So you can see when I don't press any keys, all of the values on the software are nice, like 255. So what I want to kind of demonstrate now is that even because of the start point calibration, we can also detect a tiny little bit of movement. So I'm just going to take the control here. So you have to watch the bottom left key on the software, and I kind of like press the keycap here, and you can already see this value going down to 240, 254, 253, like only a few steps down. And well, we're still playing around with this, and of course, this idea is not practical at all. Like you never want to accidentally activate your key or something like that, right? But what we kind of want to aim for is that when you have Tesla cars or any kind of like electric car, usually you have like different settings you can change in between. Like you have like your normal mode, and then you have like your start mode, and then you have like your speed mode or whatever. And Tesla cars, they also have a fourth mode, which is ludicrous mode. And what we kind of want to aim for is that, okay, this is going to be ludicrous mode, where it's like, okay, even the slightest touch is already going to do something. just a ridiculous tech demo, let's say. So even just pressing it a little bit, you can already see, okay, I can detect it. So we can do some cool stuff with that. So that is the start of the press calibration we talked about. And now to kind of demonstrate this I need to do it like this. Wait, this linear line going down. So when I press it slowly, you can kind of see, okay, it goes nicely, 200. Okay, now I'm reaching like a halfway point, going even further down, and then press it all the way, and it's nice and zero. And that is for every key. This one is also the same. Okay, I wiggle back and forth a little bit, press all the way down, a nice linear line. I can do that for any key on the keyboard. So I think that's kind of it for the tech demo.
Cool.
Okay, let me go back to normal mode.
Restore everything. Okay. They're showing again. Great. Okay, very cool, very impressive. Now, one more thing. This wasn't really specified in the blog that much, but you also did a extensive cable test this week.
Oh yeah. So I think, well, maybe I should actually move the camera back to the other view, because it will be easier to show the cable stuff. Okay, here we go. Nice and smooth. So So of course, with the lacquer cable, you've already kind of seen this. So this is the actual final lacquer cable with like a nice color braiding you're seeing on the picture. But then this one is missing something critical, which is the connector, because I cut it off. And this lighting here is so annoying. So what I've been kind of been doing with USB cables is that very often USB cables, when you look at them from the outside, they kind of look the same. Like maybe the cable feels a little. You can already feel a little bit if it's quality or not. But then what we found out when we tested a lot of USB cables for the lacquer edition is how you can really figure out if it's a good cable or not. Is you have to just completely rip it apart and look on the inside. So what I kind of want to demonstrate with this cable is that it's one of the best USB cables I've seen so far. And a few things that really indicate this is, I can try showing this. I don't know how this works. Is it going to focus? No. How do I show this? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, not really going to work. But then what I kind of want to show is that here we have this sort of cable core. And this cable consists of like 4 or 5 different layers. There's outer plastic layer. There's like an inner braid. Then there's an aluminum foil layer. Then there's a very tiny carton layer, and then you get to the actual cables. And all those layers give it both protection against like any sort of interference coming from outside, but also give it strength. So if you have a cheaper cable, we've sometimes seen that maybe they don't have a very strong plastic layer, or maybe they don't have any of the braiding inside at all. And very often with those cables, they're very faulty, where either like they get when you twist them like this, they kind of get twisted or bent or anything like that, or they have a lot of trouble with interference from other devices. But this one is super solid. And going to the connector a little bit, so this is already ruined. I mean, this is I had to rip it apart because it was so solid. So I kind of took my tool and cut and bent until I could take it off. So it's a metal jacket cable. So it's a very high quality metal jacket cable. And then here you can kind of get an idea for all the different layers. It's very hard to see, so I'll just skip that. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is that this is the USB connector. And what you can kind of see here is on the USB connector, there are these metal pins. And the cables are directly attached to the metal pins or directly attached to the connector. And very often what you see with USB connectors is that instead of these pins, they have like a tiny PCB attached here, and the cables are soldered on the PCB. But this one has, I feel like, a more solid construction. So that was Jeroen's cable lesson for today. Yeah, pretty good quality. I was very impressed with how they constructed this one.
Very cool. So I think a question everybody has is like, when is going to be the mass production, and when can I have my lacquer edition on my desk? We're very close to mass production, but we're not releasing a date yet because we're still waiting for one thing, and that's at the end of the month there will be a DVT, and that's a design validation test where we produce one keyboard. Correct? Yeah, one keyboard will be produced, or a few samples will be produced, and then we can check like the final quality, packaging, design, and that kind of jazz if all the colors are correct. And yeah, and right after that we can do a mass production. So depending on the results of the DVT, then we can, plan a date or have a final date when the mass production is going to happen. And that's also when we're going to announce when we're going to do a mass production. And once we know that, then we can also plan the whole logistics, and we can very closely predict when you can have this keyboard on your desk. So stay tuned for a delivery date pretty soon. Another big thing that happened this week, we announced the Wooting 2 HE. So what is the Wooting 2 HE? Well, The Wooting 2 HE is a Wooting 2 with lacquer switches installed. So you could compare it to the lacquer edition, except the Wooting 2 HE doesn't have the exclusive limited edition perks the Wooting 2 lacquer edition have, like the PBT keycaps, the unique color theme, unique packaging, free snack bar, and all that kind of stuff. So the lacquer edition will still be very unique, but this is just the next step in the keyboard and in our keyboard lineup. And why are we releasing it now? I think a while ago we said that we would release it or accept pre-orders once we know for sure that we can produce the lacquer edition in a very short amount of time, or when we're very close to the mass production. Because there are a lot of people who wanted to get a lacquer edition, but all the 1,000 pieces were sold out, and they're just waiting for something, something else. And it's also nice for us to just have a cash boost. Is that to say? Just to start selling pre-orders and of this Wooting 2 HE. Pre-orders open next week, the 15th of October. And it will be the price is going to be 180 euros or 180 US dollars for the keyboard. There will be a cheaper ISO version available, I think for 170 euros, but that is without keycaps, and we'll go into those details why there are no keycaps on a ISO version. We'll announce it now. We will go in depth in it next week. We'll also have a proper website next week. And when are we going to deliver, Jeroen?
I'm sorry?
When are we going to deliver the Wooting 2 HE?
Yeah, so the Wooting 2 HE, we set the delivery date in April. Did he say give a date like 21st or something? I don't know. Somewhere in April. And the reason we kind of set that date is because, as always, every year, at the start of the year is Chinese New Year. And Chinese New Year is basically screw up everything related to manufacturing for about a month or so in either end of January or start of February. So the reason we set April is because with how development is going right now with the lacquer edition, we are quite confident we can do a production before Chinese New Year and hopefully get it on the boat before Chinese New Year, because that's the key. Okay, you need to get your stuff out of China before Chinese New Year starts, and ideally like 1 or 2 weeks before, because otherwise like logistics is going to be problematic and everything like that. But then the problem is, okay, that is best case scenario, and we all know by now that best case scenario doesn't always work out. So that's why we said, okay, April delivery date, so that if we miss this Chinese New Year window and we're going to produce after, which is going to be in let's say end of February, then we can make an April delivery. So if we mass produce after Chinese New Year, we can deliver, or the keyboard will be on your doorstep in April. So that's why we said, okay, delivery date in April, which is a relatively safe bet. But then, because of how difficult developing products can be sometimes, I think it's a good indication. So April 2021.
There's also a website with a timer when we're going to launch the pre-order, so anybody who wants to jump in straight ahead and go for it next week. I think that's it, right? Those are the two major topics.